It could have been a beautiful combination, like butter on popcorn, pouring Castlevania Symphony of the Night inspired pixel art over the demanding gameplay of a Souls-like feels like a pairing that should lead fans of both to fall in love. Unfortunately, Death's Gambit's execution fails to fully realize its buttery premise. Though this 2D action game achieves an unsettling horror vibe and features some cool art, it can become confusing and frustrating, and not in a fun way like Dark Souls or Bloodborne. Death's Gambit draws you in with a mysterious gothic horror-esque yarn about Sauron, an undead knight revived by the Grim Reaper to kill an army of immortal monsters. It isn't especially hard to piece the whole thing together, but waves of flashbacks and nightmares cultivate an air of mystery and stirs a sense of dread. That vague horror vibe is Death's Gambit's best attribute by far. Enhancing that atmosphere, the art style relies on a pixelated 32-bit aesthetic clearly meant to specifically evoke the classic Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Though you can see every pixel, the characters, enemies, and landscape carry a remarkable amount of detail, bringing to life a world in ruin.
You are only one.
Though much of Death's Gambit looks great, Cyrodiil is a strange and not especially well-built video game world. The plot pushes you through it in an almost linear fashion, but you have frequent opportunities to veer off to new, seemingly optional areas with new places to see and bosses to fight. What it doesn't tell you is that most of these areas are actually mandatory, and missing one can leave you wondering where you're supposed to go next, forcing you to retrace your steps. Worse than those navigation issues is the pacing and lack of direction. The difficulty of each area implies that you're meant to tackle them in a specific order, but that's never properly telegraphed in ways that similar games do. Though its art and winding tunnel-like rooms clearly bring Castlevania to mind, Death's Gambit cribs the vast majority of its gameplay ideas from Dark Souls. Soren's actions, from attacks to blocking and dodging, are limited by a short endurance meter, which makes cautious, conscientious combat the rule. When you defeat enemies, you earn shards instead of souls, but they are similarly used to either enhance individual statistics and level up, or as currency. It's a good system and easy to pick up even if you aren't familiar with it from other games. Plus, unlike Dark Souls, Soren's statistics are clearly explained, so you never have to worry about upgrading a mystery stat or failing to upgrade one that turns out to be important. Sadly, for a Souls-like game that requires precise combat, Death's Gambit feels technically sloppy. It misses controller inputs frequently enough that it's hard to complete combos or precisely timed strikes and dodges. Strategic flurries of attacks devolve into mashing if you need to press buttons extra times to make sure combos go through, which in turn uses up the stamina bar and leaves you exposed to an enemy attack. Precise games require you to trust in reliable and precise controls. Death's Gambit never earned that trust. Death's Gambit is a very blunt attempt to fuse two beloved games, Dark Souls and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, into one challenging 2D action platformer. Developer White Rabbit shows a strong understanding of what made each of them great, but glosses over fundamentals that all great games need, such as responsive controls and an understandable game world, and falls short of its promise. For more on Death's Gambit, check out the first 15 minutes of gameplay, and make sure to watch the reviews of all the other Metroid-style 2D platformers out this summer, including Dead Cells, Chasm, Guacamelee 2, and more.